Hi folks, so this will be a very quick video really with probably with some stills in it as well. We have changed the coolant on the CBF over a couple of nights, and like a complete doofus I've forgotten to video it, but the bike is still partly in bits, so it's actually a very simple procedure. You just got to kind of take your time and do it methodically and so on. So let me just go through what you'll need, and I'll take some photos of the areas of the bike, or maybe I'll just do it in video, and hopefully it still makes sense to you. Alright, let's show you what you need. Okay, so what I used was this Castrol pre-mixed coolant, suitable for all water-cooled motorcycles. Apart from magnesium alloyed engined bikes, but CBF 1000 is just an alloy engine bike, so we are okay to go with that. So pre-mixed, no faffing about with distilled water and antifreeze and mixing it up, so that's all good. Quite cheap as well. I think from memory it was about £7 per litre, which I would say is quite cheap. You'll also see in front of you here a 101 or maybe 110 piece, I think it was, Jubilee clip set, stainless Jubilee clip set. So I bought this off of eBay. It's meant to be, I think, 304 stainless, time will tell, but there's a number of Jubilee clips on the bike that I wanted to change, not least at the front of the engine, but also all the pipe work associated with the cooling, primarily, or at least for this job. So we got all that changed, and I'll show you that in a second. You'll also need some copper grease. You'll need a little ratchet with a 6, 7 and 8 socket, mil socket. You'll need 3 and 4 size Allen keys, metric Allen keys, and a pan to drain your coolant into. And you'll also need, wait until I grab it, you'll also need a hose of some kind. Now this hose here is actually my hose for filling up my water barrels for my caravan. So that will need thoroughly cleaned out before I poison the family. But anyway, let's move on, and I'll show you the bike. It's still in bits. I'll show you what's been done and what you need to do, okay? Okay, so the coolant in this bike was the original coolant. I know the bike is a 2008, but the bike has barely been serviced in its life. It's only done 14,000 miles. It was serviced by me about 9.5 years ago before I sold it to my friend Steve, who's the guy I got it from again this time round. He's not serviced it. He's done about 9,000 miles. So the original coolant is toxic. The premix coolant is not. It's a different colour. It's not yellow. It's blue. And so we're good to go from that regard. Let me show you the Jubilee clips that I've replaced first of all. Then I'll go over the method. Okay, so Jubilee clips. So one here just above the water pump, and then we've got down here, up here. Anything basically that you see that is shiny has been recently replaced. So there at the top, there at the bottom, there in the water pump, and up there at the bottom of the radiator. Oh, come on, phone. You can focus. There we go. And hard to see, but the two in there, the one right down at the bottom, and we've got these ones round here. So all replaced with stainless Jubilee clips, just to smarten the bike up a little bit, also to know so that I know that everything is tight and it's not going to leak, which it hasn't done. The bike's been run up to temperature here in the garage since the change, and we're all good to go. So that's the Jubilee clips. Let me now show you the method by which we've done the change. Okay, so to get to the radiator cap, it is under the tank. We'll go down this side away, that'll be maybe easier. You'll notice that fine bit of wood there. So there's the cap there in the thermostat housing. So you've got to lift the tank. So in order to lift the tank, really, you've got to take off this fairing bolt, the fairing bolt under here, and same on the other side. And then I also took off this one, maybe struggle to see it, but it's just there. So once you take off those bolts there, then you can get a hand from somebody just to squeeze these out a little bit, just enough to get the tank up. And then you'll need your willing assistant again to put, in this case, a little log under the top here, down flat bottomed onto the frame. So the tank's been there for a while. It's had no wobbles, thankfully. In order to lift the tank up, you've got to take out the long bolt that goes through here, which I need to relocate. That's a bit of a worry. And rest it down on a clout, as we say in Scotland here. Alright, so that's the tank up. We then take off the side panel, which we had off for the air filter when we did that. This time to get to the expansion tank here. Now that was quite difficult to empty out, and I'll explain how we did that later. So first thing we do is we crack off this bolt down here, and that bolt is the water pump drain bolt. Can't quite remember what size that is, but it's one of the ones I told you at the start of the video. So that's obviously quite a low point of the bike, but I also took off this hose here, and together with that hose being taken off that's in the middle of the screen at the Jubilee clip, and the water pump drain plug, then we got most of it out. However, we were left with some coolant in that tank. You'll see that it's slightly above the maximum there. I'll talk about that later. So once those two bits were drained off and most of the coolant came out, we were still left with some in the tank. Now I first thought, right, let's flush it through with fresh water. Now up here in the bonny northeast of Scotland, we have very good drinking water. Very little in the way of scaling. So I thought, right, let's just put the hose up to here and try and flush it out. Now that worked to an extent, and it did push out some of the old yellow coolant, but there was still some there left. So I had to resort to going to the other side of the bike. Now this is the bit, unfortunately, due to my lack of organisation, let's call it, or just general stupidity, that I can't show you. So in order to get every last bit of old coolant out of the bike, you've got to go behind this battery. So to take the battery off, obviously just your terminals here, so your negative being the last one to come off, and this battery carrier here, there's only one bolt. Whether that's been the case, I suspect maybe since my friend Steve, who I bought this bike from, when he changed this battery to a Motobat battery, good batteries by the way, and perhaps lost the top one, I'm not entirely sure, but you'll see my very snazzy bright blue cable tie there, which is holding that on nicely, not too tight across those cables. But in behind that there is a hose, so one bit comes down, and one bit comes up, and you separate them. You just basically pull them apart. There's little pinch clips on them, and you pull apart those two, and you take the bottom hose and very carefully thread it back down through here and down into that gap. You see the daylight down there, so poke it out that gap there, and then your expansion tank here will empty. Now getting it down there is easy. Getting it back up, or at least getting it back up through the proper channel so it's not tight or snagging, was a bit less easy. But it was okay. A narrow pair of long nose pliers and some patience, not something that I'm massively endowed with. We got it back up, or I got it back up I should say. Reconnected it. The little spring clip didn't like to go back on, so I used a tiny little Jubilee clip. It'll probably, almost undoubtedly, be the thing that rattles and does my nut in. But we won't know that until we're out in the bike. But it was fairly wedged in, so maybe I'll get away with it. So that's the bike entirely drained of coolant by this stage, and these hoses are joined back up in the middle. There's like a T piece without the T, if you like, so a little solid joiny piece, and all put back together. So then what we need to do is we need to get the bike filled up with coolant. So let's go over that now. Okay, so remember, pre-mixed coolant, which is good. Now this end of the hose here that you're looking at just now goes into there, obviously not at that angle. I tended to do it, let me just, if I can do this, not very well, not one-handed anyway. I tended to have this end right above the screen like that, and the other end, so this end, down straight into the thermostat housing there. Now that worked quite well. I emptied about 2 litres of coolant, pre-mixed coolant, into that thermostat housing until the level came up to the neck of where that cap should be applied. Okay, so at this point, so we've put the first 2 litres of coolant. Now the bike's coolant capacity is 2.71 or 2.77. So I've put 2 litres in, it's brought it up to the top of the filler neck in the thermostat housing at the radiator cap. You know that it's getting to the point because you hear it trickling in to the system, and then the trickling stops, but it's still not up to the top of the radiator cap, so you know that it's just about there. So just be careful, have a rag or something round it because coolant's fairly nasty stuff. So I've got it up to the neck, so then I start the bike, but before I do that I've got to put back the battery. So just the reverse of what you do to take it out. Make sure it's secured properly, cable ties especially, and start it up. Now start it up, let it run for 2 or 3 minutes, and then crack the throttle suddenly, a few times. I probably did it about 8 times and an extra 4 for the neighbours. So yeah, do that, and that gets rid of the air locks within the system, and you can check that because the level has gone down. You can no longer see the coolant within the radiator housings, so it's getting rid of the air from the system. At that point, turn it off, and then fill the radiator cap thermostat housing area back up to the top again. Start it up again, do the same again, just repeat the procedure. And then at that point, let the bike cool down a little bit because the bike will be fairly hot by this point. Put your radiator cap back on, make sure it's properly screwed down. And at that point, turn it on again, run it again, this time for a bit longer. I would tend to do it until the fan cuts in, so the bike's proper hot now. Check for any leaks because I've replaced all these Jubilee clips. You want to make sure everything's tight. Now luckily, perhaps a little bit of luck, there was no leaks whatsoever, so I'm dead chuffed about that. That's really good. And then if you need to add a little bit extra coolant to the system, then add it in to your expansion tank under the seat as opposed to through the radiator cap. Radiator cap is now on anyway, so just do it at the expansion tank. Now, as things happened, I put in a little bit too much. You've probably seen that at the start of the video, so I'm going to take the turkey baster and soak just a little bit of that out. It's probably almost nothing. It's probably at the point where it'll just come out the overflow if it does want to come out. There's still plenty of space above it, so no big deal. I might not even do the old turkey baster, but who knows, I like to be quite particular. And that's that. You put the tank back on. You'll need a pair of friendly hands for that again, just so you don't muller the fairing, and get the bolt through at the pivot point on the tank where it meets the seat, and put the side covers on, and that's that. Obviously take it for a run. After the first 2 or 3 runs, after every run, check for leaks again, because coolant is pretty nasty stuff. You don't want that on your back tyre going round a bend. Probably wouldn't get that far in fairness because it would just burn off on the header pipes, but always good to check for leaks. Just check the level basically. You might not know there's an actual leak, but you'll know by checking the level in the header tank, on the expansion tank. And that's it. I probably took, I think it was actually 3 sittings I did this in. It's probably, if I did it again straight away now, it would probably take me half the time. It probably took me about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours, maybe. But yeah, it'd probably take me an hour and a half to do it from start to finish if I wanted to do it again at this stage. Just remembering how to do it is the main thing. But that's it. Nothing else to tell you. Sorry for not showing you the bits and pieces per stage that I should have done. I just completely forgot, which, you know, given that it's the third video in the project series, is not ideal. But next thing we're going to tackle, I think, will be the bleeding of the clutch fluid. So I'll do my very best to take some proper video and footage of that actually happening. Until then, thanks for tuning in. If you want any further help or advice or want to ask any questions, then just comment below. And like the video if you liked it. If you didn't, that's fine too. I'm not all that fussed. This is more for me, in a way, as a diary of what I'm doing to this bike. But if you liked it, subscribe, like the video, comment below, and so on and so forth. I'll be happy to help if I can. Alright, until next time folks, see you later.